In this tutorial, we'll be going over Adobe Illustrator Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4, which is all about editing and combining shapes and paths and creating this cute little happy camper poster by building all these little bitty elements one at a time. But part of the work's done for you. Let's do File and Open. Go to your Lessons folder, find Lesson 4, and go ahead and grab the Start file. You're going to notice here that you've got now a number of different artboards that we're going to be working on to create and put all those elements into your poster. Let's do a file, save as, and name it Happy Camper .Adobe Illustrator and save. I've already got one, so it's set already there. Let's go ahead and say OK. I'm going to take my selection tool and hit this top artboard, and let's do a view, fit Artboard in Window as a way to fill the whole thing. So what we're actually going to be making here is the window for the camper. These are actually curtains. Took me a while to figure that out. Alright, so what are we going to do? The first thing we need to do is change this from a closed path to an open path in order so we can change the shape. So how are we going to do that? The first thing we need to do is grab the selection tool and select the shape that we're actually going to want to change. We're then going to want to find our scissors tool. Scissors are underneath the eraser, so click and hold until you get the scissors. I'm going to do a Control plus so you can zoom in a little bit, see what we're doing. And I want to bring my scissors over this selection, and I need to get the word path. When I get the word path, then I can use my scissors. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and I get now a new little anchor point. In order to play with it, I need to grab that direct selection tool, and now I can drag that anchor point to create the curtains. Now I only made half. How do I get this other half here? Basically, I take this side and bring it over in order to create a little bit better that other angle. So this right now is what's called an open path because it is not completely closed in. If you were to do that, put the paint bucket in, I'm sure you've all done that on online coloring, you would accidentally fill in this entire thing, which is what we do not want to happen. So we need to do what's called join the paths. So we're going to go back to our selection tool, make sure we have that selected. We're going to go to Object, we're going to come down here to Path, and go over to Join. So now you can see that we now have one full solid shape. So let's go ahead and make those purple. So let's grab our selection tool, make sure we're still selected, go to Fill, and pick one of these purples. This is a little bit different because it's a custom swatch set. Let's go with purple number 3, and if I do a Control minus, zoom out, you'll notice my sample does not have any type of stroke, so I'm going to go to my stroke and say no stroke. Click out, and I've got the beginning of my window. Let's do a view, fit Artboard in Window, and you can kind of see them side by side. We've created that. So now we need to group these items so when we go to put them onto our mobile home trailer, it will come all as one piece. So we're going to drag a selection around it, see it collects all those paths. We're going to come over here to Group on the Properties panel. So now when we try and move it, it will all move as one thing. Let's go ahead and go to the next artboard, come down here to the bottom left, hit the arrow that says Next. So the next thing we're going to be making is the propane tank that sits on top of part of the trailer. It kind of looks like a fishing bobber. The last one we did, we used the scissors. This time we're going to actually use the knife, and the way we're going to use the knife will actually be free form, so it will not correct or clean up your work for you. So let's go ahead, grab our selection tool, and select what we need to cut. If we go under our scissors, we can grab the knife. Now with the knife, we need to basically make a mark across what we want, how we want it to split. So you can make it straight across, let go, and let's go ahead and go back to our selection tool, and you can see now I've got two different parts. Let's go ahead and deselect. Now if I grab my selection tool, I can color just that top part. So let's go ahead and come over here to Fill and use one of the pink colors. And now I've got kind of the top of that document, or of that thing. Let's go ahead, grab this one here, which is the top of our propane tank, and bring it down. And so now we have completed our bobber propane tank. Let's grab our selection tool, do a marquee around the whole thing, and group that one. Let's do a Control S to save what we've got so far. So let's go ahead and go to the next artboard where we're going to be creating this little opening in the tent. So I'm going to do a Control Plus. Let's go back to my other artboard. Oh, come back. There we go. Click on my artboard, Control Plus, space bar, kind of slide it over. Alright, so the first time we cut with the knife, it was crooked, but you can actually cut with a knife in a straight line. So let's go ahead and look at what we've got here. The first thing we need to do is select this pink triangle, because that is what we're going to use to create the background. We're going to go ahead and select the knife. And this time, you notice when we have the knife, it turns into a little knife icon. If we push the caps lock, it turns into what's called a precise cursor. So let's go ahead and come over to where we want to cut in half. Let's grab our Alt and Shift and drag straight down. I let go of my mouse, I let go of my buttons, and now I've got part of it. Now I need one more piece in order to create that illusion. So I'm going to go ahead, click here, hit Alt, and I don't quite like what I got there, so I'm going to delete it, undo. This time, let's just hold let's try Alt again. There we go. I still don't like it. Undo. Let's try. There we go. That was with Alt. So now I've got two different sections. So now if I use my selection tool, I can actually select those individual triangles separately. So we need this inside triangle to look like light is coming out of the tent. So let's go ahead and come to Fill, come to the yellowish color. Oh, that didn't work because we didn't have the right one selected. We need just that selected. So let's do Undo, deselect the whole thing, select just that one with a fill of kind of the yellow. And you'll notice that it's a little bit short, so I'm going to go ahead and drag it up just a little bit. Fill that window door just a little bit more. Alright, so now let's do a View, fit Artboard Window, and we can see we've got a pretty similar thing going on. Let's do a Control S. And let's grab our selection tool and group that one as well. Did we group the last one? Let's go back and make sure we oh, we did group it. Alright, let's go ahead and go to our next artboard. You can use the arrows, use my selection key. Now this one's a little bit tricky because it looks like we have a rectangle, but it's actually just a really fat stroke. So grab your selection tool and make sure you're toward the middle in order to select it. So we're going to select it. So let's go Object, Path, and let's do Outline Stroke. So it's actually going to convert that line into a shape for us. So we need to move this down into the plant. We can grab that little center button and move it straight down without having to go ahead and do other things. Let's make sure it's selected. So now in order to create kind of the rounded shape, we're actually going to use the eraser tool. And because only one shape is selected, it will only erase just that one part. So it's going to seem like you're erasing extra stuff, but you're not. So let's go ahead and go up here to our eraser tool, which is under the knife, and let's double click it. And you're going to get this option panel. We want our size of our eraser to be about 20 points, and we're going to say OK. Then what we're going to do is basically drag from top to bottom, kind of a round shape, and it will erase for us. And I can scoot it over a little bit. Go ahead and hit my selection tool. So not incredibly awesome. I could go through and do it again to make it perfect. I'm going with nature is not perfect, so we're going with that. Let's go with our selection tool, drag a selection around it, and group our plant. Alright, let's go to our next artboard. Our next one is to create two separate doors instead of one giant door. So let's grab our selection tool and let's click on the door. Let's do a Control plus a few times so we can kind of see what we're doing. We want to grab that eraser. We want to double click. And we don't want a big fat eraser like we did last time. This time we want just kind of a small skinny eraser. So let's take it down to 5. So think it is kind of like brush sizes when you're working in the other programs. Oh, in this one as well. Alright, so let's push OK. Now, how to do it straight. We want to go ahead and hit Shift, drag from top to bottom. Let go mouse, let go Shift. And now you have two separate doors, which is pretty cool. That's what we need. Let's do our selection tool, select the whole thing, and group it to create one piece. Alright, let's switch artboards again. Now we're going to do what's called creating a compound path, which actually lets you kind of cut a hole out of one thing to make it kind of see-through. So we're actually making wheels. Let's go ahead and grab our selection tool. The first thing we want to do is kind of the gray circle here. We're going to take and drag it until you get kind of centered within the other wheel. You can always adjust it with your arrow keys if you want. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to grab this white spot as well and move it over. Use those smart guides to make your life a little bit easier as far as alignment goes. So now, if you notice, this wheel is actually black in the middle, not white. So how are we going to make that happen? We're going to make sure that we have the gray selected. We're going to hit Shift and we're going to select the white. So we have both objects selected. Let's do it again. Let's select the white, select the gray, so we've got both of them. Let's go ahead and go to Object, come down to Compound Path, and Make. And now you'll see we basically made a donut. So let's go ahead, grab our selection tool, and create the group. So we've got one giant thing. Alright, so what's left? We've got the trailer left. Let's go ahead, go into the next one. So if you look here, the trailer is really just made up of several different types of shapes. We've got circles, we've got different triangles and squares. So what we need to do is get it down to this one shape, because right now if we try to color this in and play with it, we'd have to undo the stroke on everything, and everything would move around differently and it wouldn't work for you. So we're going to actually use what's called the Shape Builder tool. So earlier, we used the Shaper tool. We're going to come down a few more and grab that Shape Builder tool. Let's go ahead and do a Control plus, kind of bring that over so we can see a little bit better what we're doing. All right, with our selection tool, we want to make sure in order to use the Shape Builder, we have to tell it what we're going to build shapes out of. So I'm going to grab a marquee around the top. I do not want to grab the wheel. I don't want to include the wheel in what we're doing right now. Alright, I'm going to go back to my Shape Builder tool. It's going to say, okay, what do you want to do? So we want to combine these two shapes right here into one shape. So how do I do that? I go from the outside, I drag across, and now it creates one giant shape. So now I want to create one shape out of all the rest of this. I'm going to position my cursor out here. I'm going to hit Shift and drag all the way down. I'm going to release my mouse, and then I'm going to release my other, and we now have one big shape, but I still have this weird trunk thing on the back that I don't really want. So I'm going to go over it. I'm going to use Alt and see it turns a little bit different. And I want to go ahead and Alt delete it by clicking it. So now I have that shape, but I still don't want to have this tire here. I want to take that out a little bit. So let's go ahead, do a Shift Control A to deselect. Alright, now I want to make sure that I select everything including the wheel, because I want to take this part off. So what are we going to do now? Let's go ahead and make sure it's all completely selected. Make sure I'm in my Shape Builder tool. And I'm going to hit Alt and drag up and let go, and it's going to take that shape out. So now I've got that wheel well shape. All right, I'm going to do a Control S, Shift Control A, and a Control S to save. Let's go ahead and grab our selection tool, click in our kind of our shell of our camper, and create the fill. So pick a color that you think it should be. This says it's red. To me, it looks kind of pink. And for stroke, no stroke. We don't need an outline for it. So let's go ahead, grab and drag all the way across all of them, and call it Group, and do a Control S for that one. So the last thing we need to build for our, no, we need to build a couple more things. The next thing we're going to build, let's go for our art boards, is a door. So you see this door is really just a circle and a square and a couple more circles. But we need to combine them down into one single shape to make it a lot easier to work with. So let's grab our selection tool, grab outside, and just do the corner of the rectangle and the circle. Don't grab the paths for these circles as well, because we want to do something with those separately. So let's go ahead and look at some of our Pathfinder effects. Let's go to Window and pull open the Pathfinder and see what this palette has. This palette has one that's called Unite, minus front, so you can make different types of shapes. If we hit Unite, it's permanently going to make that into one shape. So I can't go through and change or move one shape or the other. So it's kind of a destructive way to do it. So I'm going to do Control Z and undo that. But instead, I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt and Unite. And now if you see the outlines, you can still see the paths of those individual shapes. Because right now we've got kind of a weird keyhole thing going on, and we want it to be nice and flat. So we have now united those two shapes. Let's go ahead and deselect it, do a Control S to save. Alright, so let's go to our selection tool and double click that stroke so we get into that isolation mode. In the isolation mode, let's go ahead and select that circle path, and you can use your arrow keys and bring it down. So you see we're now getting rid of that weird keyhole effect we had going on earlier. So when you get it to where you want, you can click out, hit escape, and it'll take you back out of the isolation mode. So we are in much better shape than we were. Let's go ahead and do a few more things. Let's select it again. And we want to do what's called expand, so that we are actually putting these together better. So now we've gotten rid of those individual paths. Let's go ahead, change our fill color, go to fill, and change it to a pink. And we do not want the stroke, so take the stroke and turn it off. And our color's kind of weird. Let's go ahead with a little bit lighter pink. Oh, I'm on stroke. No stroke. Fill. And too light. Alright, now I match. Now because when we started this we did not select these two other circles, the doorknob and the window, they did not become part of our shape. So that's why you had to be really careful on how you were selecting these things. Alright, let's do a Control S. And let's build a trailer. So let's do some View, or just do some Control minus. And let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got our trailer. I'm going to close my Pathfinder. So let's go ahead and, oh, do we group our last one? I remember if we grouped our last one. Alright, let's just start at the top. Whoa! View. Fit all in window. Alright, here we go. Let's go ahead, grab our window and bring it over. And I'm not positioning these yet. I just want to take all these individual elements and bring them over. And clearly I did not group that one. So let's go to View, Fit Artboard and Window, grab a selection tool, select the whole thing, and group it. Let's go to View, Fit All in Window, and let's go grab that door, bring it over to our trailer. And that's pretty much what we need for the trailer. So let's click on our artboard, View, Fit Artboard and Window, and go ahead and put all your individual pieces in place to create your trailer. When you've got it everywhere, everything where you want it, take and group it, select and group. So now you've got the trailer ready to go. So now let's do a few things with reshaping some paths. Let's come down to the artboards right underneath our trailer, and we get kind of these little flamey things. So let's figure out how we actually create and reshape this path. How are we going to turn this into that? So let's go ahead, grab our selection tool, and hit this one called Start. So we're actually selecting that element. We're going to go over here to our Scale tool, which is kind of over here. That's your Scale tool, and you want to come down to the Reshape tool, which kind of looks like a smiley face with an arrow. Alright, with our Reshape tool, we're going to actually change the shape of our straight old path. So I can do it by clicking and dragging, and I can click and drag in multiple places in order to kind of get that S shape. Alright, so that's not bad. That's a good start. Let's leave it selected. So now how do we make it wider? We make it wider with the Width tool, which to me kind of looks like a flower. We're going to take our Width tool. We're going to click over our path. And we're going to drag away. See how it gets that little tilde kind of? We're going to drag away to create how wide we actually want it to go. So totally up to you, maybe about 0.2 or so. Alright, so this blue line in the middle is called the width point, and these are the handles which actually help us to select and change things. Let's go ahead and click in our blank area to kind of deselect that area. Let's go ahead and go our pointer anywhere over the path, and you can see that you can change different parts of the path size with that Width tool. So you actually have the ability to change multiple items when you're on there. So let's go ahead and undo that, Control Z. Let's go to our selection tool. Let's go back over, selection, and we should be able to see with our Width tool that width point. So you see right here we get that width point. So we just talked about what are some other things you can do. You can actually change that width point. You can grab it with the handles, make it bigger, smaller. So that's how you can change that path. So let's go ahead, and we want these ends to be pointed. So how are we going to do that? With the Width tool selected, we're going to double click on this top one right here, and it's going to pop up a panel for us. We want this point right here to be 0. So we want it to be pointy. And we're going to say OK. So let's do that same here to the bottom and say OK. So now we've got this nice S shape that we want to play with. So what else can we do? Well, we need to make these two other little lines. So let's take our selection tool. Let's do an Alt and drag and make a copy. Let's do our Shift and resize. Ooh, undo. And I'm not liking how that's turning out. There we go. And we're going to get smaller things. Or we can do it a couple other ways. Let's do an undo. Let's go ahead and select it. Let's go ahead, do edit copy. Let's do an edit paste. And so we've got it right over here. Now, we saw earlier when we were trying to play with it, it got kind of a weird shape. That's because we were messing with the path. Let's go to Object, let's go to Path, and let's go to Outline Stroke. So now it's an individual item, which now allows us to shift drag without losing or reshaping a whole bunch. So let's kind of put that. This is actually smoke for the fire. And I need one more of these, so I'm going to Alt click. And I want it to be the other way. So I want to flip it over. So with it selected, I'm going to go up here to my transform, and we have a flip horizontal, we have a flip vertical. Let's go ahead and flip it horizontally. So now it's kind of opposite of the other. So now I've got my fire. I'm going to go ahead and grab my selection tool and group all of those items. So let's go back to our view, fit all in window. Now we know we need our tent on the major window, or on the major poster. We know we need our trailer. We know we need our fire, our smoke for our fire anyway. And we see over here on the pasteboard, we've got this fire. So let's go ahead and select all of that, bring it over. So you can kind of sit and play with where all these individual elements are going to go. I need my car. So I'm going to connect my car. See, I can put my tent over here. If you want to, you can add more plants. Use Alt, add a few more plants. Totally up to you as to how you're going to treat that. So let's go ahead and view. Do fit artboard window, and now you've created all these little things using different types of shapes and paths. And my car isn't connected to my trailer. So totally up to you as to how you're going to arrange those items. When you're done, do a file package and turn in a zipped file to Canvas. So you're going to go ahead and change it, and I'm going to do happy camper folder underscore package. So I'm going to copy my links, I'm going to copy fonts if I've got any, and I'm going to say package. I'm going to say show it. And I can see here on my desktop, I now have this one called Happy Camper Package, and it's got my elements in it. Depending on how many fonts you have, depending on how many things you have, you'll get a lot more in the package. It's just kind of a safe way to get in the process of, in the habit of packaging, so you don't lose assets on accident. And go ahead and submit that to Canvas.